Worthless. That was the word that left her mouth, sharp and deliberate, aimed like a blade she knew would cut deepest. My stepdaughter, Ashley, didn't scream it in the heat of an argument. She didn't mutter it under her breath. She looked me dead in the eye and said it with a smirk, as if she had finally found the right insult, the one that would strip me down to nothing. Not because I failed her, not because I betrayed her, but because I don't have a college degree. That was the moment something inside me broke. For years, I had told myself her little jabs were just teenage moods, passing storms that would fade once she grew older. But that night, when she spat the word worthless at me, I realized she didn't just see me as less. She saw me as nothing. And so, in that instant, I stopped being her convenient ATM. She had asked me to co-sign her student loan, to put my name on the dotted line and bind myself to her choices. I was supposed to nod, smile, and sign without hesitation, because that's what I had always done. Provide. But I didn't. I told her no. And in that refusal, the mask slipped from both her and her mother. Christine didn't defend me. She didn't correct Ashley. She just sat there, silent, like my worth was something she, too, had been questioning all along. My name is John. I'm 48 years old. I work as an electrician in a small Texas town. I don't wear a suit, I don't sit behind a desk, and I sure as hell don't have a framed degree on the wall. What I do have are calloused hands and a back that's carried more weight than I'll ever admit. I've earned every dollar I've ever made with sweat, bruises, and sometimes blood. It's not glamorous, but it's honest. 6 years ago, I married Christine. She was 39 then, a single mother trying to hold everything together. Her daughter Ashley was 13, awkward, moody, at that stage where the world seems unfair and every adult feels like an enemy. Christine told me Ashley's father had been gone for years. Not dead, not unreachable, just gone. A man who thought raising a daughter was optional. I should have known then. I should have understood that stepping into another man's empty shoes meant I'd always be compared, always weighed against a ghost who could only grow larger in absence. But I didn't think of that. I thought about stability, about giving Christine and Ashley a home they could rely on, about building something real. So I stepped in. From the start, it was my paycheck that paid the bills. My hands that fixed the leaky pipes and rewired the flickering lights in the house Christine rented. When Ashley needed braces, I was the one who signed the payment plan. When Christine's car broke down on the side of the highway, I was the one crawling under it in the dirt, while the Texas sun burned my neck raw. And when Ashley started high school, I was the one who bought her new clothes, new shoes, the laptop she swore she couldn't survive without. I wasn't just buying things. I was buying acceptance, or at least I thought I was. For years, Ashley treated me with politeness, sometimes indifference, but nothing openly hostile. I told myself that was good enough. Teenagers don't hand out gratitude freely, and I didn't expect her to call me Dad. I just wanted her to know that I was here, that unlike the man who vanished, I wasn't going anywhere. But here's the truth that eats at me now. She never once thanked me. Not really. She'd smile when she got what she wanted. Sure, but gratitude never came. And Christine, she noticed. She'd sometimes say, "John, you don't have to do all this. She's not your responsibility." She meant it as kindness, but it landed like poison. Because if Ashley wasn't my responsibility, then why the hell was I breaking my back every day to provide for her? I told myself love wasn't about blood, that presence mattered more than biology, that if I just kept showing up, one day Ashley would see the difference between the man who left her and the man who stayed. And for a long time, that belief carried me. I remember Ashley's 16th birthday. I had worked overtime for months, crawling through attics in the middle of July, running wiring in houses so hot the insulation felt like fire against my skin. I saved enough to buy her a used car. Not new, not flashy, but safe and reliable. I handed her the keys in the driveway, expecting maybe, just maybe, a look of recognition that I had done something her real father never would. She barely looked up from her phone when she said, "Cool." Christine smiled, told me I was generous, that Ashley would appreciate it more as she got older. I clung to those words. I had to, because deep down I felt the truth. that no matter how much I gave, it would never be enough. Still, I kept giving. I paid for her insurance, her phone, her extracurricular activities, her prom dress. Every time Christine hesitated, worried about money, I stepped in without question. Because I believed I was building something permanent, a bond that couldn't be denied. But as Ashley grew older, something shifted. By 17, she had new friends, a boyfriend named Trevor, and suddenly the man who had been there for her every day of her life no longer mattered. She started to mock me in small ways, rolling her eyes when I offered advice, ignoring me at the dinner table, laughing with her friends about how old-fashioned I was. I swallowed it. I told myself teenagers are cruel by default, that it was a phase. Until that night, I had cooked dinner, something simple but from the heart. I set the table and asked if we could all eat together. Ashley smirked, leaned back in her chair and said, "What could you possibly teach me? You don't even have a degree." The words hit harder than any tool I've ever swung. They landed like a hammer to the chest, splintering every illusion I had clung to. She wasn't just brushing me off. She was erasing me, reducing years of sacrifice, years of labor, years of standing in her father's place, to nothing more than a lack of paper on a wall. Worthless. That's what she called me. That's what Christine let her call me. And in that moment, I understood. I wasn't her stepfather. I was her wallet, her convenience, her safety net. But safety nets tear when you spit on them long enough. That was the night I decided I wouldn't co-sign her loan. That was the night I stopped paying for everything she demanded. That was the night I realized the only way to show Ashley my worth was to stop letting her treat me as worthless. Until Ashley turned 17, I told myself things were manageable. Not perfect, not easy, but manageable. She wasn't warm with me, but she wasn't cruel either. I had convinced myself that silence was progress, that if she wasn't openly rejecting me, then maybe, in some small way, she was accepting me. But 17 changes a person. New friends, new influences. A boyfriend named Trevor whose smirk reminded me too much of her absent father. That's when the cracks started to widen. When Ashley began to look at me not as the man who raised her but as some obstacle in the way of the life she thought she deserved. Started small. She would mock the way I talked about my work, rolling her eyes when I described a long day on the job. "Cool story, John," she'd mutter, her fingers flying across her phone screen while I tried to tell Christine about fixing a faulty breaker that had nearly caught fire. I'd laugh it off, tell myself she was just being a teenager. But the sting always lingered. Other times, it was her silence. I'd ask about school, about her grades, about her future, and she'd shrug. Sometimes she wouldn't even answer me directly. She'd look at Christine, as if I wasn't in the room, and respond to her instead. It was like I was speaking a language Ashley had decided wasn't worth understanding. But then came Trevor. He was smooth, cocky, the kind of boy who thought the world owed him something. I didn't trust him from the start. I'd see him pull up in his dented car, music blasting, Ashley climbing in like she was escaping a prison. When he shook my hand, his grip was limp, his eyes already sliding past me like I was nothing. And Ashley adored him for it. One evening, I heard them laughing in the driveway. I stepped outside, wiping grease from my hands after fixing Christine's old washing machine. They didn't see me at first. Ashley was telling Trevor about me, about how I'd spent 3 hours crawling around behind the unit just to save us a service fee. "God," she laughed. "He acts like that's some kind of achievement, like anyone cares he can fix wires. If he had a degree, maybe he wouldn't have to work himself to death all the time." Trevor laughed with her, nodding. "Guess some people are just stuck where they are." Those words burned hotter than the Texas sun beating down on me. I stood there, listening to my own stepdaughter mock the very labor that put food on her plate, while her boyfriend nodded like he understood anything about sacrifice. I wanted to march down that driveway and remind them both that it was my money keeping her in clothes, my work that kept the lights on in the house she slept in. But I didn't. I went back inside, sat down at the kitchen table, and stared at my hands. Calloused, scarred. Hands that had built her entire life, and yet, in her eyes, they meant nothing. The pattern grew worse. She'd disappear for hours, come home late, roll her eyes at curfews as though I were some outdated relic. Christine, desperate to keep peace, would intervene on Ashley's behalf. John, she's just a teenager. Let her breathe. Each time Christine excused her behavior, Ashley grew bolder, as though my authority was nothing more than a nuisance she had to tolerate. Then came the night that stripped away the last of my illusions. I made dinner, nothing extravagant, but a real family meal. I grilled chicken, roasted potatoes, poured sweet tea into glasses that sweat on the table under the hum of the ceiling fan. I wanted us to sit together, just the three of us, like a family. Ashley walked in late, her hair still damp from a shower, her phone clutched like an extension of her hand. She sat down, glanced at the food, and sighed. "Can we just order pizza?" she asked. I forced a smile. "I spent a couple hours making this. Let's eat together tonight." She smirked, leaning back in her chair. "Why? What do you even have to teach me? You don't even have a degree." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Christine froze, her fork halfway to her mouth, her eyes darting between me and Ashley. And me. I felt the air leave my lungs, felt the sting of humiliation sharper than any injury I'd ever taken on the job. I had built this house into a home. I had paid for the food sitting on that table. I had sacrificed years of my life so she could have more than I ever did. And yet, in her eyes, none of it mattered. Because I didn't have a piece of paper on the wall. Because I wasn't her real father. I swallowed hard, forcing down the anger boiling in my chest. "A degree doesn't make a person," I said quietly. "Hard work does. Providing does. Showing up does." Ashley laughed. "Sure, John. Keep telling yourself that." Christine said nothing. Not a word. She looked down at her plate, her silence louder than Ashley's contempt. That moment was worse than any insult. Because in her silence, Christine chose her daughter's side. She chose to let Ashley belittle me, to let her mock every sacrifice I had ever made. And by saying nothing, she confirmed what Ashley had always believed. That my worth could be measured in a degree I never earned. Dinner ended in silence. Ashley left the table halfway through, muttering about meeting Trevor. Christine tried to make small talk, but I couldn't hear her. All I could hear was Ashley's voice, cruel and dismissive. "You don't even have a degree." That was when I realized it wasn't just teenage rebellion anymore. It wasn't moodiness or immaturity. It was contempt. Open, deliberate contempt. And contempt I knew could not be reasoned with. That night, lying awake in the dark, I thought about the years I had poured into Ashley's life. The car I bought her, the insurance I paid, the braces, the phone, the endless little expenses that drained me but never once drew a thank you. I thought about Christine's silence, about the way she had let Ashley's words hang unchallenged in the air. And I knew then, the respect I had been waiting for all these years would never come. The line had been crossed. The damage was done. And the breaking point was no longer approaching. It was already here. After that night at the dinner table, something inside me went quiet. I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I didn't beg Christine to defend me or force Ashley to apologize. I just went still. The kind of stillness that comes after a storm, when the ground is wet and broken but the air is calm. On the surface, life continued. I went to work every morning, my tool belt heavy on my hips, the smell of dust and wire insulation clinging to me when I came home. I ate meals in silence, nodded when Christine tried to smooth things over, endured Ashley's smirks as she floated in and out of the house like I was a tenant in my own home. To them, maybe I looked like I had surrendered, but inside I was preparing, because I wasn't going to fight with words anymore. Words meant nothing to Ashley, and less to Christine. They had made their positions clear. Ashley saw me as worthless, and Christine was too afraid, or too willing, to contradict her. If I kept arguing, I would lose myself completely. So I began preparing in the one way I knew how, with action. I started small, quiet, the kind of preparations no one notices until it's too late. Ashley had a car, one I had bought her for her 16th birthday. I had kept up with the payments, the insurance, the maintenance, even the gas card she used to fill her tank. I stopped topping off the card. I told her the insurance bill was due and gave her no envelope of cash to cover it. She rolled her eyes, asked me if I had forgotten again. But I only shrugged. Next came her phone. I had put her on my plan years ago, paying for the latest upgrade she just had to have because all her friends had it. I went online one night, sitting in the glow of the computer screen after Christine had gone to bed, and I canceled her line. A few clicks, a confirmation, and the lifeline she clung to was gone. The student loan was the last straw. Ashley had been relentless about it, waving brochures in my face, talking about colleges in big cities where she swore she'd thrive if only I would co-sign. She never once asked if I wanted to. Never once acknowledged that binding myself to her debt was a risk. She simply expected it the way she expected everything. When the forms came in the mail, I left them unopened on the counter. Ashley stormed into the kitchen, holding them up like evidence. "John, you need to sign these. The deadline's next week." I looked at her then, really looked at her. The impatience in her eyes, the certainty that I would fold like I always had. And I said one word, "No." She blinked, confused. "What do you mean, no?" "No," I repeated. "I won't co-sign." Her face twisted in disbelief, then fury. "You're toxic, controlling. You don't want me to succeed because you're jealous you never went to college." Christine came running, her hands up like she could catch the words before they landed. "John, please, let's just talk about this." But I didn't. I had already talked enough. The next day, I sold the car. I drove it to the dealership, signed the papers, and walked away with a check in my pocket. It wasn't about the money, it was about the principle. If I was so worthless in her eyes, then she didn't deserve to drive the car I had worked myself ragged to buy. That evening, when she went outside to leave for Trevor's, she stood frozen in the driveway. "Where's my car?" she screamed, storming back inside. "Not yours anymore," I said calmly. "I sold it. You can't do that. That's mine." "No, Ashley. It was mine. Paid with my money. You just used it." Her face turned red, her voice rising to a shriek. "You're insane. Do you know how embarrassing this is? What am I supposed to do now? Ride the bus like some loser?" I reached into my pocket and handed her an envelope. She snatched it, ripped it open, and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. Her eyes darted across the words, confusion turning into rage. It was a bus schedule. "You're unbelievable," she spat. "This is abuse. You're trying to control me, to ruin my life." I stayed calm, leaning back in my chair. "No, Ashley. I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. Independence. You don't want my guidance? Fine. You don't want my support? Fine. Here's your freedom. The bus runs every 30 minutes. She threw the paper at me, her voice cracking with fury. "I hate you. You're pathetic. You'll regret this when I'm gone and never come back." Christine stepped in then, her voice trembling. "John, this is too much. She's just a kid. She doesn't understand what she's saying." I turned to her, my voice low but steady. "She's almost 18. She understands enough to call me worthless. She understands enough to mock me for not having a degree. She understands enough to demand I sign my name to her debt while spitting in my face. She understands, Christine. She just doesn't care." Ashley stormed to her room, slamming the door so hard the walls rattled. From behind it, I could hear her shouting into her now disconnected phone, cursing me, calling me every name she could think of. Christine sat at the table, her hands covering her face, whispering, "What are we doing? What's happening to us?" But I didn't answer, because deep down, I knew the truth. Nothing was happening to us. This was who we had been all along. Ashley had just found the courage or the cruelty to say it out loud. The next week was chaos. Ashley screamed, cried, begged, accused. She told anyone who would listen that I was abusive, controlling, toxic. Christine begged me in private to reconsider, to at least give Ashley back the car, but I stood firm. I had bent for too long, carried too much, endured too many insults for the sake of keeping the peace. The peace was a lie, and I was done living in it. When Ashley realized I wasn't giving in, her rage turned to desperation. One night, she cornered me in the kitchen, her eyes wet but defiant. "You think this makes you powerful? You think you've won? I'll leave. I'll go live with Dad. He actually cares about me." I almost laughed. Her dad. The man who vanished years ago, who never paid a dime for her braces, who never bought her a car, who never sat at a table and endured her contempt night after night. The ghost she had turned into a saint, while the man who had carried her life on his shoulders was treated like dirt. "Go ahead," I said quietly. "Live with him. Let him pay for your loans. Let him buy you a car. Let him cover your phone bill. I'll be waiting to see how long he lasts." Her lip trembled, and for the first time in years, I saw fear in her eyes. Because she knew he wouldn't. But pride is a powerful G. She sneered, wiped her tears, and stormed back to her room, slamming the door once more. Christine whispered to me later that night, her voice shaking. "John, she's just a child. She'll grow out of it. Please don't be so hard." I turned to her, my voice flat. "She's not a child anymore. She made her choice, and now she can live with it." And for the first time in years, I meant it. The house changed after that night. Not immediately, not in some dramatic explosion, but in small, jagged ways. The silence grew heavier. Ashley no longer bothered with her sarcastic comments when I came home from work. She hardly spoke to me at all. At first, it felt like peace. Finally, no constant stream of insults or eye rolls. But the quiet was its own kind of war. A cold shoulder meant to punish me for refusing to bend. She still had her boyfriend, still had her friends, but without a car, without a phone, without the steady stream of money I had been funneling into her life, she began to stumble. I noticed it in the mornings, her hair not straightened, her clothes less polished, her face tired from waiting on the bus or bumming rides from Trevor. Christine tried to soften the blow, offered Ashley her own car on some days, but even she couldn't cover for long. Ashley had to get a part-time job. I heard her arguing with Christine about it late one night, her voice sharp with bitterness. "Do you understand how humiliating this is? I'm supposed to be in college next year, not slinging fries at a drive-thru. Nobody else has to do this." Christine tried to calm her, but Ashley wasn't listening. She never did. She still believed she was entitled to more, that she had been cheated out of the life she deserved. But slowly, painfully, she began to taste reality. One morning, I came downstairs to find her sitting at the kitchen table, her work uniform wrinkled, her head resting on her arms. Next to her was a cup of coffee, 2 cups actually, one for her, one sitting untouched in front of my chair. Startled me. Ashley had never made me coffee before. When I sat down, she didn't look at me. She just muttered, "I figured you'd want some before work." It wasn't much. Not an apology, not gratitude, not even respect. But it was something. A crack in the armor of contempt she had worn for years. In the weeks that followed, I noticed other small things. A thank you when I passed her the salt. A quiet good night when she went to bed. Sometimes, when Christine wasn't around, Ashley even asked me questions about fixing her bike, about managing money, about what it was like working with my hands all those years. But the old trust was gone. Every word she spoke carried the weight of what had already been said. I couldn't erase "worthless" from my memory. I couldn't forget Christine's silence at the dinner table, her refusal to defend me when her daughter mocked me to my face. No matter how many cups of coffee Ashley poured, no matter how many thank yous slipped from her lips, the truth had already been revealed. I was not her father. I had never been her father. I had been the provider, the safety net, the man who carried her while she spat in my face. And when I withdrew, the house of cards collapsed. Christine tried to mend things. She asked me one night, as we lay in bed, "Do you see how she's changing? She's learning. Don't you think this was too harsh?" I turned to her, my voice cold. "Learning?" She called me worthless. She mocked the years I've given her. She told me I wasn't good enough because I don't have a degree. If she's learning anything now, it's because I finally stopped shielding her from consequences. Christine looked away, tears in her eyes. But she didn't argue. She knew I was right, even if she didn't want to admit it. Still, I could feel the distance growing between us. Christine's loyalty had always been to Ashley, and though she leaned on me for stability, for support, she would never truly stand against her daughter. That truth sat heavy in my chest, another wound that would never fully heal. Ashley kept working, kept riding the bus, kept struggling in ways she had never imagined before I cut the strings. And slowly she began to understand. Not fully, never fully, but enough. One evening, she sat across from me at the table, her voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. "I know I was harsh before," she said, not meeting my eyes. "I shouldn't have said some of the things I said." I didn't respond right away. I just let the silence hang, watched her squirm in it. Finally, I said, "You called me worthless. That doesn't get erased because you're uncomfortable now." Her lip trembled, and for a moment I thought she might cry. But she didn't. She nodded, pushed her chair back, and went to her room. I sat there long after she left, staring at the empty coffee cup she had placed in front of me earlier. And I realized something important. I didn't need her apology. I didn't need her respect. What I needed was my own self-respect. And for the first time in years, I had it. By cutting Ashley off, by refusing to co-sign, by selling her car and handing her a bus schedule, I reclaimed something I had lost long ago. My dignity, my worth. Because the truth is this, years of sacrifice don't entitle anyone to treat me like dirt. Providing for a family that isn't mine by blood doesn't give them the right to spit on me. I am not worthless. I am the man who kept this family afloat, the man who stayed when another ran. And if they can't see that, if they won't value that, then I'll set the boundaries myself. Do I feel regret? Sometimes. I see Ashley struggling, and part of me aches for her. I see Christine watching me with eyes full of disappointment, and part of me wonders if I've doomed our marriage. But then I remember the way Ashley looked at me that night at the dinner table, the way she laughed when she told me I had nothing to teach her, the way Christine sat silent as I was humiliated in my own home. And the regret hardens into resolve. Because I know this, love without respect is slavery. And I will never be a slave again. Ashley is learning now, one bus ride at a time, one paycheck at a time, one missed convenience at a time. Christine is learning too, though she won't admit it, the cost of silence, the price of siding with contempt instead of correction. And me? I've already learned. I learned that no matter how much you give, no matter how many years you sacrifice, if people choose not to respect you, they never will. The only way to demand respect is to stop giving until it is earned. So I sit here now, the house quieter than it's ever been, watching Ashley shuffle off to work, watching Christine struggle to bridge the gap between us, and I ask myself the only question that matters. Was I wrong? Was I cruel to cut her off, to sell her car, to refuse to co-sign her debt, to hand her a bus schedule instead of a signature? Or was this the only way left to show her that words have weight, that contempt has consequences, and that respect, real respect, comes with a price? I know what I believe, but tell me, if you were in my place, would you have endured it? Or would you have drawn the line as I did, and finally stood for yourself even if it meant standing alone?